There's a moment that happens in the dark, and almost nobody talks about it. It happens somewhere between the alarm and the floor, between the sound and the standing. It lasts maybe 4 seconds, and in those 4 seconds, a decision gets made about the whole day, sometimes about the whole year, sometimes about the whole life. And the man or woman making it doesn't even know a decision is being made. Let me tell you about a fellow I'll call Walter. Walter was 34 years old. He worked in a parts warehouse on the east side of a mid-sized town, second shift, and he had a plan. Now, I want you to understand this was a good plan. It was written down. It was on a single sheet of paper folded in the drawer of his nightstand. And it said that for 1 year he would rise at 5 in the morning, and he would spend 90 minutes building the repair business he'd been talking about since he was 26. 90 minutes. Before the world woke up and took the day away from him. He kept it 11 days. On the 12th morning, the alarm sounded, and Walter lay in the dark, and something spoke to him. It didn't say, "Give up on your life." It never says that. It's far too clever for that. What it said was, "You're tired. You had a hard night. You'll be sharper tomorrow." And that was true. Every word of it was true. He was tired. He had had a hard night, and he probably would be sharper tomorrow. So he rolled over, and the sheet of paper stayed in the drawer. Now, here's the part I want you to sit with. Walter did not fail on the 12th morning. What happened on the 12th morning was not failure. It was something much quieter and much more dangerous than failure. On the 12th morning, Walter changed who was in charge. He took the authority that belonged to the man who wrote that plan, the clear-eyed man, the man at his best, the man with the pen in his hand and the whole year in front of him, and he handed it over to a tired man in a dark room who could not see past the next 4 hours. And once you hand it over, my friend, it does not hand itself back. You know this feeling. I don't have to describe it to you. You have your own drawer and your own sheet of paper, and you have your own 12th morning, and you remember exactly what it sounded like when it spoke to you. It didn't sound like an enemy. It sounded like good sense. It sounded like your own voice, being reasonable. So let me ask you the question this whole hour is built on. What if the trouble was never your discipline? What if it was never your willpower, or your energy, or your circumstances, or your upbringing, or the hand you were dealt? What if the whole trouble is that somewhere along the way, without ever holding a vote, you made your feelings the head of the household, and everything since has been the natural consequence of a household run by a mood? That's what we're going to look at today. Not how to feel better, how to stop taking orders from how you feel. And I'll tell you why this matters right now and not someday. Because the years do not wait for your mood to improve. That is the one thing nobody warned you about. A feeling passes in 20 minutes. A decade passes the same way, quietly, without any announcement, made up entirely of 20-minute moods that were obeyed. Here's what I have observed, and I have been watching people a long time. Almost nobody fails at the thing they set out to do. They abandon it. And there is a world of difference between those two words. And the difference is the whole subject of this hour. Failure is what happens when you go all the way to the wall and the wall does not move. That's honorable. That's rare, actually. Genuine failure is much rarer than people suppose, because most people never get close enough to a wall to be stopped by one. Abandonment is different. Abandonment happens on an ordinary Tuesday for no reason at all, in a perfectly decent mood, and it never announces itself. It just calls itself taking a break, and the break has no end date because it was never scheduled by anything but a feeling. Watch how it shows up. Watch how ordinary it looks. A man decides he will get his health in order. He means it. He is not a liar. He is not lazy. He is not weak. He means it with his whole heart on the day he decides it. He goes 4 days. On the 5th day, he has a difficult afternoon at work, and by evening the feeling has arrived. Not tonight. And he obeys it because it seems like such a small thing to obey. And it is a small thing. That's precisely the difficulty. If obeying it cost him a year of his life all at once, he'd never do it. But it costs him one evening, and you can afford one evening. You can afford one evening about 200 times, and then one day you're 51 years old and out of breath on a staircase, wondering where the time went, when the truth is you know exactly where it went. You spent it one evening at a time, in installments so small you never felt the payment leave your hand. A woman decides she is going to get her money straightened out. She sits down on a Sunday with all the papers spread out on the table, and she builds something, a real ledger, real numbers, a real plan, and it holds for 3 weeks. Then comes a week when she does not want to look, not because anything is wrong, because she does not feel like looking, and so the envelope goes in the drawer, and then 2 envelopes, and in 11 months she is exactly where she began, except now she has the extra weight of knowing she once had a plan and didn't keep it, which is a heavier thing to carry than never having tried. A young man decides he wants to build something of his own. He reads everything, he watches everything, he can tell you the principles better than the people practicing them. He has become, without noticing it, a connoisseur of the feeling of being about to begin, and that feeling is a genuine pleasure. I don't mock it. It's one of the sweetest feelings there is. But he has quietly substituted the feeling for the thing itself. He is drinking the smell of the meal and calling it dinner. Here's what's interesting, though. Imagine you're standing in a room with those 3 people and you ask them what went wrong. Every one of them will tell you about themselves. I'm not disciplined. I've always been like this. I start strong and fade. 3 different lives, 3 different fields, 1 identical diagnosis, and all 3 of them wrong in exactly the same way. Now imagine you ask them one more question. Where's the plan? Show me the piece of paper. And watch what happens. There's a pause, there's a little laugh, and then some version of, well, it's up here. And they'll tap the side of their head as though that were an address where a mail gets delivered. That's the whole thing right there. A man will trust a filing cabinet with his tax records for 7 years and trust the most important decision of his life to a place he can't even find on a Tuesday. Do you see the pattern under all 3? It is the same pattern. In every one of those lives there was a plan, and the plan was sound, and the plan was replaced not by a better plan, but by a mood. Nobody sat down and decided against the plan. Nobody weighed it. Nobody made a case. The plan simply lost an argument it was never invited to attend. Now let me tell you about a woman I'll call Ellen, because I want you to see this at full length. Ellen was 29. She could bake, really bake, the kind of thing where people at work start putting in orders and joking that she should sell it. And one January, she decided she would. She wrote it out. Every Saturday morning, 4 hours. Test 1 recipe, cost it out, photograph it, and by Sunday night, put it in front of 10 people who were not her friends. That was the whole plan. Modest, achievable, a child could have kept it. The first Saturday, she was electric. She was up before the alarm. She did 5 hours instead of 4. The second Saturday, it rained, and she was a little flat, and she did 3 hours, and told herself she'd make it up. The third Saturday, she had been out late Friday, and she thought, I'll do it Sunday instead. Sunday came, and she was tired from being tired, and she thought, I'll double up next week. Now understand, and this is the part people miss, she had not quit. In her own mind, she was still absolutely a woman with a bakery plan. If you had asked her at that moment, she would have told you about it with real light in her eyes. By April, she was doing it twice a month, whenever the mood was right. By July, she was doing it whenever she felt inspired, which turned out to be about once every 6 weeks, usually after seeing somebody else's success and feeling a sting. By the following January, 1 full year, 52 Saturdays, 200 hours she had promised herself, she had spent maybe 30. And when she thought about it, which she avoided doing, she reached a conclusion that I want you to hear very carefully, because it is the cruelest lie in this whole business. She concluded, I guess I didn't want it badly enough. That is not what happened. That is not remotely what happened. She wanted it. She wanted it in January, and she wanted it in July, and she wants it tonight. What she did not have was a system for the mornings when the wanting was not present in the room. That's all. That is the entire difference. and it has nothing whatsoever to do with the size of her desire. Because here is a fact about desire that took me a long time to understand. Desire is not a fuel tank you fill once. Desire is a visitor. It comes to the door, sometimes at inconvenient hours, and it stays as long as it stays, and then it leaves without telling you where it's going. Everyone has met it. Everyone has felt that fire on a Sunday night. The question that decides a life is not, did the fire come? The fire comes to everybody. The question is, what did you build while it was burning that will keep working after it goes out? Most people build nothing. They just enjoy the warmth and assume it will always be there. And then it goes out. And it always goes out. That is what fire does. And they stand in the cold and conclude they are not the kind of person who can do this. Now stop for a moment. Really stop. Notice what happens when you don't feel like it. Not the big things, the small ones. Notice the speed of it. You don't feel like making the call, and inside of half a second, before any thought has occurred to you at all, your mind has produced a reason, and it's a good reason. It's not a flimsy reason. That's what's remarkable. It's tailored. It's specific to your situation. It would hold up in front of a jury. It's late in the day. They probably won't answer. I'd rather do it properly when I have time to prepare. I've done a lot today already. Have you felt this in your own life? Of course you have. Everyone has. Now here's what most people never realize about that voice, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. It never argues before the decision. It only argues after. The reason arrives behind the reluctance, not in front of it. You did not reason your way into not calling. You didn't want to call, and then your mind, which is a very loyal servant and very good at its work, went out and got you a reason, the way a good attorney goes and gets you a defense. That's not thinking. That's a mood hiring a lawyer. Which brings me to the first real principle of this hour, and I want to say it plainly because it's not what you expect a fellow like me to say. Your feelings are not the enemy. I mean that. I'm not going to stand here and tell you to become a machine, to grit your teeth, to despise your own inner life. That's foolish advice, and it doesn't work on anybody for very long. Your feelings are useful. They are marvelous, in fact. They tell you things nothing else can tell you. That a person cannot be trusted, that a road is wrong, that you are carrying more than you can carry, that something you love is slipping away from you. Ignore all of that and you will wreck yourself just as surely, only more quietly. But hear the distinction, because everything depends on it. A feeling is a report. It is not an instruction. A feeling is a report on your body, on your last 4 hours, on your blood sugar, on the argument you had at breakfast, on the weather, on whether a stranger looked at you a certain way. That is honest information, and you should read it. But it is a report about the past, and you are attempting to build a future. And a report on the past has no business commanding the future. The trouble is that feelings do not arrive labeled as reports. They arrive dressed as instructions. They arrive with the full authority of the self. When you feel discouraged, it does not feel like I am currently experiencing discouragement, which is data about my tiredness. It feels like this will not work. When you feel afraid, it does not feel like my body is reacting to unfamiliarity. It feels like this is dangerous and I am wise to hesitate. That is the counterfeit. And nearly every human being alive is spending their one life obeying counterfeit orders. Let me put it in the plainest terms I know, the way a farmer would put it. No man who ever grew anything consulted his feelings about the season. Think about that. The seed does not go in the ground in April because the farmer woke up inspired. It goes in the ground in April because it is April. That is the entire reasoning. The weather that morning is not a factor in the decision. It is only a factor in the difficulty of the decision. Cold morning, warm morning, the man is out there because the calendar does not negotiate and the harvest does not care how he felt in the spring. Now imagine a man who planted according to his mood. Some Aprils he'd feel it and some he wouldn't. Some Junes he'd weed and some he'd leave it. He would not be a farmer. He would be a man who owns a field. And there is an enormous number of people walking around today who own a field. You can see it in them, and I'd guess you can feel it in yourself now and then. They have the land, they have the seed, the talent, the idea, the training, the good intention. Some of them have better land than the people eating well. And every season they go out and stand at the edge of it. And if the mood is right, they work a little. And if it isn't, they come back in. And every year they say the same sentence. Next year, I'm really going to do something with that field. I have never once heard a person say, I obeyed my feelings for 30 years, and it built me a life I'm proud of. Not once. Not in all the years I've spent talking to people about how their lives turned out. But I have heard the other sentence, hundreds of times. I knew what to do. I just didn't do it consistently. That sentence is the great epitaph of human potential. It ought to be carved over the door of every school in the country as a warning. Here's what makes it so hard to catch in your own life. The gap between knowing and doing is invisible from the inside. You see, when you know a thing, it feels like you're partway there. It feels like progress. And that's the trap, because knowing costs nothing and rewards immediately. You read the book, and you feel the satisfaction of a man who has changed. You watch the talk, and there's a lift in your chest. And it is a genuine lift. I'm not dismissing it. But the lift is chemical, and it will be gone by Thursday. And if nothing was installed while you were feeling it, then Thursday's version of you will be exactly the man who was here on Monday. The only difference will be that he now believes he has already dealt with this. That's the real cost. Not lost time, counterfeit progress. A man who knows he's doing nothing will eventually do something. A man who mistakes understanding for change will do nothing for years and feel fine about it. So let me ask you something, and I want you to answer it honestly, because nobody's listening but you. When was the last time you did something at the appointed hour that you did not feel like doing? Not something you were forced to do. Your job doesn't count. Your boss counts for that. I mean something nobody was watching. Something that had no consequence today and every consequence in 5 years. When was the last time you kept an appointment with yourself on a day when you did not want to? If you have to reach back a long way to find it, don't feel ashamed. Feel interested, because you have just located the exact spot where your life is leaking. It is not in your intelligence. It is not in your circumstances, which are probably harder than most people know. It is in that one specific hinge, the hinge between what you decided and what you felt an hour before you had to do it. And I have good news about that hinge, which is the whole reason I'm talking to you today. It can be fixed, not by becoming a different sort of person, not by finding some deeper reserve of character you were born without. It can be fixed the way a house is fixed, with structure, with something you build on paper while you are calm that goes on working when you are not. That is what a plan is. And almost nobody in this world has one. They have hopes. They have goals, which are hopes wearing a necktie. Very few have a plan, and fewer still have written it down. And that small handful are running the world while the rest of us discuss how we're feeling about it. So let's go under the hood. Let's find out why this works the way it does. Because once you see the machinery, you can never again believe that this is a matter of character. Start with a simple truth about the mind. The mind does not obey your wishes. It obeys your repetitions. That's the whole science of it. And men have said it in fancier language for 100 years. But that's the meat. Whatever you do again and again, at the same time, in the same way, gets written down somewhere below the level of your thinking. And after enough repetitions, it stops requiring a decision at all. It becomes what you are, not what you intend, what you are. Now notice what that means, and this is the sharp end of it. You are always training something, always. There is no neutral. On the mornings you rise and work the plan, you are training a man who works the plan. And on the mornings you roll over, you are not resting. You are training just as diligently a man who consults his feelings before acting. You are laying down the same groove, only in the other direction. And the mind does not know the difference and does not care. It is a wonderfully obedient servant and a perfectly indifferent one. So the fellow who breaks his plan for one morning has not lost one morning. That's the arithmetic error underneath every abandoned ambition. He has made the next morning harder because he has just taught his own mind with an actual physical repetition that the plan is subject to review by the mood. And once a thing is subject to review, it will be reviewed every single day forever. And you will have to win that argument every single day forever with a tired man in a dark room, whereas the man who does not break it is not fighting at all after a while. Nobody argues with him because there's no one to argue with. The question has been settled and taken off the table. That is the whole of it. Some people are not stronger than you. They have simply removed a question from the table that you leave on the table every morning of your life. Now I want to give you the thing I most want you to carry out of this hour. If you forget everything else, take this. You do not have a discipline problem. You have an authority problem. Let me show you what I mean, because this is the hinge of a whole life. There are two of you. There always have been. There's the one who sits down on a Sunday evening with a cup of coffee and a clear head and looks honestly at the shape of his life, at the years going by, at what he wants his name to mean, at the people depending on him, and makes a decision. That one is wise. That one can see 3 years out. That one has nothing to gain by lying to you. And then there's the one who has to get up on Tuesday. The Tuesday one cannot see 3 years out. He cannot see past lunch. He is not evil. He is not weak. He is simply nearsighted by design. That's how the creature is built, and no amount of shaming will change it. He is standing very close to the discomfort, so the discomfort fills his whole field of view, the way your thumb can blot out the sun if you hold it near enough to your eye. Here's the tragedy of the ordinary life. The wise one makes all the decisions, and the nearsighted one gets all the votes. Every plan you ever wrote was written by the best version of you, and every plan you ever broke was broken by the tiredest version of you. And you have been running your entire life as though those two men had equal standing, as though a decision made in full daylight with the whole picture in view should be relitigated at 5 in the morning by a man who cannot find his shoes. You would never run a business that way. Imagine a company where the board meets, considers everything, and sets the course for the year, and then any employee having a rough morning may overturn it before the coffee is made. That business would not survive a quarter. And yet that is the exact constitution under which most human beings are governing the only life they will ever get. So here is the reframe, and I'd like you to feel the weight of it. The plan is not a wish. The plan is a ruling. It is a decision made once by the only version of you qualified to make it, recorded in writing, precisely so that the unqualified version can be shown the paper and told, with all kindness, you don't get a vote on this. You get a vote on lunch. And that is not tyranny over yourself. Understand that. That is the opposite. That is the tired man's protection, because the tired man does not actually want to be in charge. He never did. Ask him at the end of a wasted year whether he enjoyed his authority. He'll tell you the truth. He was miserable holding it. He was exhausted from 1,000 daily negotiations he was never equipped to conduct. The greatest kindness you can do for your future self is to take some things away from him and put them in writing where he can't reach them. Let me show you two men. Same age, same town, same year. I've seen this pair 100 times over under different names. The first I'll call Thomas, 41. Worked nights loading trucks, which is honest work and hard on a body. He wanted to be a draftsman. That was the whole of the ambition. Nothing enormous, no empire, a decent trade with his name on it. And what he had going for him was almost nothing. No unusual talent, no money set aside. He came home at 4 in the morning with his back aching. What he had was 1 page. On it he had written, 6 days a week, 1 hour before sleep. Not 2 hours, 1. And underneath it, 1 sentence that I think was the smartest thing that man ever wrote. On bad days, I do the hour badly. I do not skip the hour. Now understand what that sentence did. It removed the only escape hatch that matters. Because when the plan is do good work, every tired night is an honest exemption. You genuinely can't do good work when you're that far gone. So skipping feels like integrity. But when the plan is do the hour, There is no exemption available to a living man. You can do an hour badly. Anybody can. So the door was welded shut, not by discipline, but by the design of the sentence. 4 years. He was not consistent because he was inspired. There were whole months where he felt nothing at all about drafting. He was consistent because the question had been removed. And at 45, he was doing it for a living. And the fellows at the warehouse said he'd been lucky. And one of them said he must have had a gift for it. He did have a gift. It was 1 page. Now the second man. I'll call him Ray. Same age, same town. And Ray had everything Thomas didn't. Real ability, the kind other people notice and remark on. Ideas that were genuinely better. A quicker mind and a warmer way with people. And Ray worked in weather. When the mood came on him, he was magnificent. He'd go 3 days barely sleeping and produce more in 72 hours than Thomas produced in a month. And he knew it. And that knowledge was the very thing that finished him. Because a man who has once done a month's work in 3 days will never again respect an ordinary Tuesday. He's tasted the storm. Everything else feels like drizzle. So he waits for weather. And here's what he told himself while waiting. And it sounded like wisdom. It sounded like self-knowledge. I know how I work. I'm not a machine. Forcing it just produces garbage. He is 58 now. He is still, in his own mind, a man of extraordinary promise. And he is right. He was. The promise was real. Nobody was lying about Ray. But the promise came due on a Tuesday, over and over. And there was nobody home to sign for it. And eventually they stopped delivering. I want to be careful here because it would be easy to hear that as a story about laziness, and it isn't. Ray wasn't lazy. Ray worked harder than Thomas in the hours he worked, far harder. He simply left the scheduling of his life to a visitor, and visitors keep their own hours. But here's the part nobody tells you. This is the part that changes everything, and when you get hold of it, you'll wonder how you carried the other belief for so long. You have been waiting for the feeling in order to act. The feeling comes from the acting. Not sometimes, as a rule. As reliably as heat comes from friction. Look back at your own life for the evidence. You don't need my word. You have your own record. Think about a time when you did not want to go somewhere. A gathering, a class, a long drive to see somebody. You dreaded it all day. You looked for an honest way out, and then you went. Because you'd said you would, and 40 minutes in, you noticed that you were glad. Not enduring it, glad. And on the way home, you thought, I nearly didn't come. Where did that gladness come from? It was not in you at 4 o'clock. You searched for it at 4 o'clock, and the shelf was bare. It was manufactured by the going. The action was the factory, and the feeling was the product. And you have had it backwards your entire life, standing at the loading dock at 4 in the afternoon, waiting for a shipment that only ships after you turn the machines on. Every single one of us has run this experiment hundreds of times, and gotten the same result every time, and drawn no conclusion from it whatsoever. That's the thing about human beings that would be funny if it weren't costing so much. So when you say, I'll do it when I feel ready, hear what you're actually saying. You are saying, I will begin manufacturing this after the goods arrive. You've put the effect in front of the cause. That's not a character flaw. That's a wiring error. And a wiring error can be corrected in an afternoon, whereas a character flaw takes a lifetime, which is precisely why so many people prefer to believe it's a character flaw. There's a strange comfort in a problem too deep to fix. Now, let me be honest with you about why this is hard, because I have no interest in selling you an easy thing. 3 fears stand in the doorway, and every one of them wears a disguise. The first calls itself authenticity. It says, acting against how you feel is dishonest. It says a man who does what he doesn't feel is a fraud, is performing, is not being true to himself. And that sounds noble. It's the most respectable-sounding excuse of our times. But turn it over. By that reasoning, no father would sit up with a sick child at 3 in the morning, because he certainly doesn't feel like it. No one would keep a hard promise. Every wedding vow ever spoken is a formal announcement that you intend to act independently of your future feelings. That's the entire point of a vow. It's the reason we say them out loud in front of witnesses. We already know this about love. We've simply never applied it to work or to health or to the plans we make for ourselves in the dark of a nightstand drawer. The second fear is deeper, and it doesn't speak at all. It's the fear of finding out that you're ordinary. As long as you never work the plan steadily, you can keep the beautiful thought, I could have been remarkable if I'd applied myself. That thought is a treasure, and part of you knows exactly how much it's worth, and part of you is guarding it. Because the day you follow a plan for 2 years with real consistency, you will find out what you actually are, and it might be less than you hoped. So the mind, protecting you, keeps the question open forever. It would rather you die with the possibility intact than live with the measurement. And I'll tell you the truth about that measurement, having watched a great many people take it. You are almost certainly more capable than you fear, and less special than you hope. And both of those turn out to be very good news, because what remains once you accept them is available to anybody, and it happens to be the thing that actually builds a life. The third fear is the smallest and does the most damage. It's the fear of the difficulty of starting, not the work, the transition into the work, that 30 seconds where the body has to move from a warm chair to a cold task. Nearly every abandoned plan in the history of the world was abandoned in that 30 seconds, not in the hour, in the doorway. Which is why, as we come to what you actually do about all this, nearly everything I'm going to tell you is about the doorway. There is somebody listening to me right now who is sitting in a chair with the television on, and the thing they meant to do this evening is in the next room, 20 feet away. The book, the ledger, the instrument, the letter that needed writing, 20 feet. And they are not lying to themselves. They haven't decided against it. They fully intend to get up in 5 minutes. And they'll intend it again in 15, and again at 10 o'clock. And around 11, a different sentence will arrive. And it'll be a gentle one. There's always tomorrow. And they'll go to bed with a small weight on the chest that they've grown so used to they no longer call it anything. I want to say something to that person because I've been that person, and there's no scolding in it at all. That weight you feel is not guilt. Guilt is for wrongdoing, and you've done nothing wrong tonight. That weight is unspent capacity. It's the specific ache of a man carrying around ability he isn't using, and it does not go away with rest, and it does not go away with distraction, and it will not go away with another year of good intentions. There's exactly one thing that lifts it, and it isn't 20 push-ups worth of self-improvement or a new philosophy of life. It's 20 feet. So what do you actually do? Here's what I know. First, write it down, on paper, with an hour and a day on it. I know how that sounds. It sounds too simple to matter, and that is exactly why almost nobody does it, and exactly why the people who do it pull away from the crowd so quietly that everyone assumes they were born lucky. Here is why the paper matters, and it isn't sentiment. A thought in your head can be edited by a mood without leaving a mark. You will revise it at 5 in the morning and never know you revised it, because there's no original to compare against. The tired man edits the file, and there's no earlier version. But a thing in your handwriting cannot be edited by a feeling. It just lies there. It says what it said in daylight, and you must now either do it or knowingly refuse it. And that word knowingly is the whole value of the exercise. Most abandonment survives only because it never has to be done consciously. So write the sentence. Not, I will get in shape. That's a wish. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 a.m., 40 minutes. Not, I'll work on the business. Saturday, 7 to 9. A day, an hour, a duration. If it doesn't have a time on it, you don't have a plan. You have a mood with ambition. And put your name at the bottom. I mean that literally. Sign it the way you'd sign anything that binds you. There's something in a man that responds to his signature, and I've stopped trying to explain it and started using it. Second, and this is the one that saves the whole thing, set the minimum, not the maximum. Nearly every plan on earth is written by an excited man, and an excited man writes a plan for an excited man. 2 hours a day, 5 mornings, the full program, and it works beautifully, right up until the first ordinary week, and then it shatters, and it shatters completely, because it had no lower gear. So write the number you could do on your worst honest day. Not your best, your worst. If your best is 2 hours, write 30 minutes. And now understand what you've built. On good days, you'll do far more than 30, and it'll feel like winning. On bad days, you'll do exactly 30 and go to bed unbroken. The chain holds. And the chain is worth more than the hours, a great deal more, and it will take you a year to believe me about that. Thomas had it. On bad days, I do the hour badly. I do not skip the hour. Write your own version of that sentence tonight. It is the single most valuable sentence in any plan I've ever seen. Third, decide in advance what you'll do about the 3 moods, because you already know which ones are coming. You've met all of them. There are only 3, really. Tired. Decide now. Tired is not an exemption. It's a reduction. Tired means you do the minimum. It does not mean you do nothing. Write that down. Discouraged. Discouraged usually means you compared yourself to somebody at 9 in the evening, which is the hour when comparison is at its most dishonest. Decide now. Discouragement is not a reason to stop. It's a signal to stop measuring for the day and go back to the work. Write that down, too. Distracted. The fine idea. This one is a snake, and it comes in beautiful colors. It's the brand new plan that arrives, always around week 3, always more exciting than the plan you're on. Decide now. No new plan gets started until the current one has run its full, agreed term. Write it on the page. That single rule will save some of you a decade. You see what we're doing here? We are not building willpower. We are making the decisions ahead of time, in daylight, and taking them off the tired man's desk. Every decision you leave for the moment is a decision you will lose about half the time. Every decision you make in advance, on paper, you have already won. So here's what you do, starting today, not someday, and this is simpler than you think. Fourth, shrink the doorway. Remember, the plan doesn't die during the work. It dies in the 30 seconds before it. So attack that 30 seconds like it's the only enemy, because very nearly it is. Lay the work out the night before, physically, where you'll walk into it. Clothes by the bed. Book open on the table with a pen on top of the page. The file already open on the screen. You are removing every point at which a tired man could pause and be consulted, because a tired man consulted is a tired man lost. And make the first action ridiculous, absurdly small. Not write the chapter. Open the file and read the last paragraph aloud. Not do the workout. Put the shoes on and walk to the end of the street. You are not negotiating with yourself about the hour. You are only asking for the doorway. And here's the thing you'll discover, and you'll discover it within a week. 9 times in 10, once you're through the doorway, you simply keep going. Because the reluctance was never about the work. It was about the transition. The 10th time, you'll do the small thing and stop. And even that counts, because you showed up, and the groove got cut a little deeper in the right direction. Fifth, keep a record where you can see it. A calendar on the wall. A mark for every day you kept it. This is not decoration, and it isn't a game. It is the only honest witness you'll have. Because your memory is not a witness. Your memory is on the tired man's payroll, and it will tell you I have been doing pretty well lately when you've kept 4 of the last 14. Paper does not have opinions. Paper just shows you the row of marks, or the gaps, and once a week that row of marks will do more for you than any speech ever given, mine included. And add one rule to that calendar: never twice. Miss a day because you will, you're a human being, and life arrives, and you do not carry it. It's weather. But you do not miss the next one, not for any reason. 1 miss is an accident. 2 in a row is the beginning of a new habit, and the mind cannot tell the difference between a break and a new direction. Whatever it does twice, it starts to believe. So the rule is simple and absolute. You may fall down, you may not lie down. 6th, tell 1 person, exactly 1. Not a crowd. Announcing to a crowd gives you the feeling of having done the thing, and that feeling is poison. It discharges the very pressure you need. 1 person. Someone who will ask you, plainly and without drama, on the same day each week, did you do it? And your job is only to answer honestly. You would be amazed at what a man will do rather than say no out loud to another human being on a Friday. Amazed. We are social creatures to our bones, and if you cannot yet keep a promise for your own sake, you can borrow another person's expectation until your own is strong enough to stand. And there is no shame in borrowing. Every builder uses scaffolding. Seventh, review on a schedule, not in a mood. Now somebody's thinking, what if the plan is wrong? What if I'm faithfully executing the wrong thing for a year? That's a fair question, and here's the answer. Plans absolutely need correcting. Only a fool holds a course after the facts have changed. But mark this well. Corrections belong to the wise man, not the tired one. So put the review on the calendar. Once a month, a fixed day, in daylight, with the record in front of you. On that day, you may change anything you like. The hour, the method, the whole objective. Change it freely, you're allowed. But on a Tuesday at 5 in the morning, in the dark, with the alarm going, you may not revise the plan, not one word, because that is not correction. That is the mood wearing the clothing of strategy, and it is the single most common way an ambition dies. Not abandoned, mind you, revised into something a little easier again and again, in the dark, until there's nothing left of it and no one ever admitted quitting. And rest. Let's speak of that, because someone needs to hear it. Rest is essential, and rest belongs in the plan. You schedule it. The 7th day, the 2 weeks in summer, the evening that belongs to your family and to nothing else. Rest taken on schedule restores a man. Rest seized by a mood does not restore him. It costs him twice, once in the hour and once in the self-respect. That's the difference between a day off and a day lost, and they can look identical from the outside while being opposites on the inside. Now, somebody's listening to all this and thinking it sounds awfully rigid. A card, a calendar, a minimum, rules about Tuesdays. Here's what I know. Nobody ever calls a farmer rigid. They call him a farmer. He plants in the spring and he harvests in the fall, and he doesn't hold a meeting with himself about it. And at the end of 40 years, the man has fed a county. The freest people I have ever known were the most scheduled, and the most scheduled people I have ever known were the freest. And it took me half my life to understand that those two sentences are the same sentence. Structure isn't the cage. Structure is what you build so the mood can't run the place. Now let me take you back to Walter, lying in the dark on the 12th morning. I told you at the start that what happened there wasn't failure. You know now what it was. There was nothing wrong with Walter's desire. He'd carried that desire for 8 years, and it was as alive that morning as it ever was. There was nothing wrong with his plan. The plan was excellent. What went wrong is that the plan had no standing. It was a suggestion made by a man who wasn't in the room, and the man who was in the room outranked him. And here's what I'd want to say to him, if I could sit on the edge of that bed. Son, you're not being asked how you feel. Nobody's asking. You settle this on Sunday. All that's required of you at 5 in the morning is to put your feet on the floor, because the man who wrote that page could see 11 years ahead, and you can only see until lunch, and you're about to overrule him. Same for Ellen and her Saturdays. She didn't want it badly enough. She wanted it plenty. She just never built anything that could work in the absence of wanting. So let me put the whole hour into one line, and then I'll let you go. Feelings are weather. A plan is a climate. You cannot control what any given morning brings you, the fog, the flatness, the sudden fire, the doubt that shows up for no reason at all. That's weather, and weather has never once asked permission from anybody. But over enough seasons, weather is not what determines what grows. Climate determines what grows. And climate is not something that happens to you. Climate is something you build, one repeated ordinary act at a time, until the land itself changes character. Any man can work in good weather. Everyone in the world has done well on his Sunday night when the fire was up. What separates one life from another is not the size of the fire. It's whether anything was built while it burned that keeps working in the rain. So here is what to do tonight. Tonight, not this week, not when things settle down. Take one index card, not a notebook, not an app, one card. because a card can be looked at without being opened. Write one line, the thing, the day, the hour, the smallest honest amount. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 6 a.m., 30 minutes. Under it, write the sentence that welds the door shut. On bad days, I do it badly. I do not skip it. Sign your name. Put the card where you'll see it when the alarm goes. And tomorrow, when the voice comes, and it will come, right on time, with an excellent reason, in your own voice, sounding like good sense, you don't argue with it. You don't have to defeat it. You only have to notice what it is. A report, not an instruction. A weather report on a morning where the climate has already been decided. Then put your feet on the floor. You have been waiting a long time to feel like the person who does these things. You will never feel like him. You will simply, one ordinary morning, look back and find that you have become him.